Morning, church. We appreciated being able to spend the last week up in Colorado. Beautiful country up there. We were up in the area of Estes Park, the Rocky Mountain National Park. Stayed in a little town called Granby, right on the Fraser River. You could walk out back behind the cabin, sit on a deck, and right by the river and listen to the water. Just incredibly relaxing, beautiful place. Hate to rub it in, a whole lot cooler than it was here last week. We got into Wichita Friday afternoon driving back, stepped out of the pickup, and I looked at Carol and I said, we ain't in Colorado anymore. We were back in the heat and the humidity again, but we had a really good time. Today marks start of 15 years here. We have completed 14, start 15 years. Thank you. Lord's really been good to us. Blessed us to be here. You all are family, and we just look forward to God continuing to work together with us here to accomplish a lot of good stuff for Him. I feel like we're in a very good place right now. Tonight, we start our Connect groups. And if you haven't signed up for a Connect group, boy, please do that and become a part of a Connect group. That is just a critical aspect, I believe, of developing our relationships with each other. Steve's developed a curriculum. We're going to be talking about paradoxes that we find in life and in Scripture. And we're going to be discussing tonight, we're going to be talking about how the unseen guides our lives. And the world looks at that and goes, I don't get this. You say this God has rules that you need to follow and you need to live by. And it is absolutely true. Yes, He does. But I think it's so important that we establish and show that unseen doesn't mean that He's unknown. There are a lot of stuff that we can't see, and yet we know that it exists. You can't see ultraviolet light. You can't see it with your eyes. But it's a very real thing, and it exists. One of the things that has fascinated me in recent years has been looking at pictures taken by the Hubble telescope, for instance, of all kinds of things that are out there that you cannot see with your naked eye. But because it's equipped with cameras that can pick up spectrums of light that we can't see, we're able to see some absolutely gorgeous arrays out in the universe that God has put there. Even though we can't see them, they exist. People say, well, I can't see God, so I don't believe in God. But when you look around and you look at all that He's created and all that He's done, I mean, we just spent a week looking at some of the most beautiful country, most glorious, majestic mountains and things, and the idea that there's nobody behind that, nobody causing that, nobody bringing that forth just doesn't make any sense. And as we come here and we worship God and we study His Word, we find His guidance for our lives. And so this evening, please, if you haven't signed up for a Connect group, do that, become a part of one, and let's grow together and enjoy the discussions that take place and the fellowship that occurs in those Connect groups. Our study's been kind of sporadic here in the book of Ruth, but I want us to come back to Ruth this morning, and we'll be looking in particular at the end of the book in chapter 3 and chapter 4. To kind of bring you up to speed, because it's been a little while, remember, during the days of the judges, there's a famine that takes place in Judea, and it must have been awful. It is so bad that a man by the name of Elimelech and his wife Naomi and his two sons are forced to leave Judea and move over to Moab, which is east of Judea. They stay there long enough that the two boys marry Moabite girls. But finally, it begins to rain again in Israel. Apparently, there are crops being made again, and in the meantime, disaster has struck the household of Elimelech. He's died, the two boys have died, and Naomi, a widow, is left with these two young widows to care for. She tells them, I'm going to go home, you girls stay here, go back to your mom and dad's houses and live with them again. One girl decides to go back. The other girl, Ruth, says no. Remember that beautiful, beautiful piece where she says, "Entreat me not to leave thee, to return from following after thee. For where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. Your people will be my people. Your God's going to be my God." She is loyal to Naomi. And so they go back to the area around Bethlehem. But they're broke. They don't have anything. Ruth decides that what she's going to do is go out and glean in a field. Now, we talked about how the law makes provision for the poor to go out into the fields during the time of harvest and pick up grain after those who are going through and harvesting it. She comes to a field owned by a man by the name of Boaz, and she begins to glean in that field. And we talked about how this isn't accidental. The scripture reads, "And it happened that," but honestly, clearly this is God working. This is his hand stirring things. And as she works in this field, Boaz, of course, asks about this girl, finds out who she is, admires her for her willingness to work in this situation. Because as we've discussed, a woman at that time, she could have turned to theft. She could have turned to begging. She could have turned to prostitution. She doesn't do any of that. She goes out there and she works and gleans in that field. And so Boaz tells the men that are harvesting the grain, "Hey, protect this girl. Watch out for her. Give her some food, give her some water, help her along, leave a little grain behind." And she comes home that evening to Naomi, and she brings all the grain that she's gleaned. Naomi's shocked at how much she's come up with. Asks whose field she's in. And she tells her, "Well, I've been gleaning in the field of Boaz." Now, the connection there is really important. And here in chapter 3 and in chapter 4, we'll pick up on that. I want to read to you chapter 3 now to give us the context for what we'll be talking about today. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, shall I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you? Is not Boaz our relative, with whose young women you were? See, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Wash, therefore, and anoint yourself, and put on your cloak, and go down to the threshing floor, but do not make yourself known to the man until he's finished eating and drinking. But when he lies down, observe the place where he lies. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he'll tell you what to do." And she replied, "All that you say, I will do." So she went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had commanded her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. Then she came softly and uncovered his feet and lay down. At midnight the man was startled and turned over, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. He said, "Who are you?" And she answered, "I'm Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer." And he said, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. You have made this last kindness greater than the first, and that you have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, don't fear. I will do for you all that you ask. For all my fellow townsmen know that you are a worthy woman. And now it is true that I am a redeemer, yet there is a redeemer nearer than I. Remain tonight, and in the morning, if he'll redeem you, good, let him do it. But if he's not willing to redeem you, then as the Lord lives, I will redeem you. Lie down until the morning." So she lay at his feet until the morning, but arose before one could recognize another. And he said, "Let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor." And he said, "Bring the garment you're wearing and hold it out." So she held it, and he measured out 6 measures of barley and put it on her. Then she went into the city, and when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, "How did you fare, my daughter?" Then she told her all that the man had done to her, saying, "These 6 measures of barley he gave to me, for he said to me, 'You must not go back empty-handed to your mother-in-law.'" She replied, "Wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out. For the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today." And in chapter 4, we find out that that is exactly what he's going to do. Because Boaz is going to go to the city gate. Remember, he mentioned a man who could be the Redeemer, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. And he challenges this guy, are you going to redeem in behalf of Elimelech? And the man says, yeah, I will. He says, well, if you do, you got to marry Ruth. The guy says, I can't do that. That'll mess with my inheritance. And so he gives Boaz permission to be the Redeemer. And of course, Boaz takes that and marries Ruth, and you have this beautiful end to the story. But what I want us to look at today is how God works with honorable people, good people of character, to accomplish some amazing things. This idea of kinsman redeemer is one that's really foreign to our culture, but was very, very important for thousands of years in that Middle Eastern culture. The role of, and the word in Hebrew is goel. The role of the goel is central to this story of Ruth. Goel is going to be translated in the New English Version as redeemer, and you heard that word again and again. Now, the one assuming the role of redeemer could be a brother, an uncle, a nephew, or other blood relative. You can find that out in the book of Leviticus, chapter 25, verses 48 and 49. But what it means is that someone linked by blood to the deceased could be called, or could take upon himself the responsibility to be the one who redeemed in behalf of this relative. Now, the role of redeemer could fulfill one of four possible roles. And let me just outline this for you very quickly. He could redeem property. Now, this is one of the things that Boaz is going to do. Okay? In chapter 4, Boaz will say, I'm going to buy back the property of Elimelech. So that's one thing that he could do. A second thing is that he could marry the kinsman's widow. You find this way back in Genesis chapter 38, with the sons of Judah. This kind of thing is talked about. This is one of the ways that he could be the Redeemer. And Boaz is willing to do this. Okay? This other Redeemer was not willing to do that. A third way could be he could recover reparations for a deceased kinsman. And a fourth way, and this is interesting and a total different topic, is that he could avenge the murder of the next of kin. He would be called the avenger of blood. And in the law of Moses, you find outlined how this could be done. And also to protect those who might be innocent, who have shed innocent blood, there were these cities of refuge that were placed, remember, in the land, that you could go to if you had accidentally killed someone, because the avenger of blood could come for you and find justice for the murder of their loved one. Anyway, that was the role of the Redeemer. Now, Boaz is going to choose to marry the kinsman's widow. And that is critical, of course, in the book of Ruth and in this story. Now, honorable people are going to act in honorable ways. And I think that is central to what we read about here and what's going on. Nearly everything that occurs in chapter 3 hinges on the character of those involved, of Naomi, of Ruth, of Boaz. Now, I'm sure that as I was reading to you this incident at the threshing floor, where Ruth sneaks in there in the middle of the night and pulls a blanket up off Boaz's feet and lays down there at his feet. And apparently he's still asleep when this happens. And then he wakes up and goes, oh, what's this woman doing here at my feet? What's going on here? With this, through the years, polluted minds have had a field day. Okay, oh, well, we know what happened when she went to him in the middle of the night like that. But I think it's very important to understand that these people, I think, are just dead wrong. And they're dead wrong because of the character of the characters involved. This is a complicated situation, brothers and sisters. Remember, Ruth's a foreigner. Okay, she's a Moabitess. She's not a Jew. There's a sense in which she is a stranger in a strange land. Now, she has told, remember, Naomi significantly, your God will be my God. She has made it clear, I am not going to worship Chemosh. That's the god of the Moabites. I am not going to follow him. I am going to follow Yahweh. I am going to be a worshiper of Yahweh. She is for all practical purposes, a Jew, even though she was born in Moab. She has given her heart to God. Naomi is going to be the Goel's nearest relative, not Ruth. Okay? Now, Ruth, being a daughter-in-law, is going to be able to be one who would see this Goel responsibility fulfilled, but first and foremost, it would be Naomi. That's why I think it's mentioned in chapter 4, when Boaz is saying, okay, I'm going to be the redeemer. I'll go buy Elimelech's land so that once more his land will be his land, and I am going to marry Ruth, who is the daughter-in-law of Elimelech. And so there's a blood tie there. And that's how this role is going to be fulfilled. Now, to approach Boaz publicly about this could be humiliating for everybody involved. I mean, what if he refuses? What if Naomi had gone to him, or what if Ruth had gone to him and said, Boaz, would you fulfill the role of kinsman redeemer? And Boaz said, well, I don't think so. Where would they have been then? And notice, there is one man, we don't know, his name's never given. There's one fellow who was closer to Elimelech. And thus it was first his responsibility, this is mentioned in chapter 4, who is going to say, well, I'll buy back the land, but I'm not going to marry the widow. Okay? But Boaz will assume that responsibility. And so this nocturnal visit makes sense if you grant the character and the honorable intentions of everybody who's involved. Now, I think it's important to understand that character is not something that can be hidden for long, either good or bad. I'll pick on politicians and plumbers for a second here. Politicians, they can talk a good line, can't they? But if they're not of good character, how long is it going to be before that begins to come out? And they can offer all kinds of platitudes, and they can make all kinds of promises. But pretty soon, you're going to find out whether they mean that or those are just empty words. You will find out what their character truly is. Our oldest son Adam worked for years for some plumbers in Lubbock as a plumber. Those men always had more jobs than they could possibly meet. They were busy all the time. And the reason is because the two brothers who owned the company were Christians. They were good, they are good men. Still alive, they're still plumbing in Lubbock. And they honorably fulfilled their contracts. They never cheated anybody. They always tried to do what was right. And word got around, and they had all the business they could handle. Character shows. After a while, people know what you're made out of. Now, what about the character of Boaz? Well, consider the events of chapter 2. Boaz doesn't have to, understand, doesn't have to fulfill the law. He does not have to allow people to come into his field and glean grain. Now, God had commanded it, but that doesn't mean that everybody did it, because everybody didn't do that. Boaz could have allowed Ruth to come in and gather grain, but he didn't have to tell his men, leave her alone, don't bother. In fact, help her out, protect her, give her some extra. You guys, when you're gleaning out in the field, drop a little bit behind, leave it there for her to pick up. He didn't have to do any of that. Why did he do that? Why are we told that? Because we're being told this is a good guy, folks. This is a good man. This is a man with a good heart, an honorable man, who sees a woman in a desperate situation, conducting herself in an honorable way, and he is going out of his way to protect her and to aid her and to help her out. That's the character of Boaz. This guy's not an abuser. He's not a user. He is nothing like that. He is the very opposite. This is a good guy. Now, would Boaz ever have permitted Ruth's visit? No. If Ruth had said, can I come see you in the middle of the night and talk to you? I'll guarantee you he would have said, no way, woman. Now, how else could this business be conducted so that nobody knows except in the manner in which it happened? She had to do what she did. Naomi's guidance here makes sense. But would Boaz have permitted that, knowing the kind of man Boaz is? I don't think so. Boaz's concern is for Ruth's reputation. I mean, once she's there, they have this discussion. What does he tell the people that are around him? Don't you tell anybody this woman came here and this happened, okay? He is first and foremost concerned with her reputation. Now, what about the character of Ruth? Well, as we've discussed, Ruth could have resorted to any of a number of situations, doing things in a way that would not be godly, would not be honorable. She didn't do any of that. She chooses to work hard to get enough grain to feed her and her mother-in-law. Boaz has noted that the woman is no opportunist. In verse 10, he said, well, she could have sought out a young man. She could have sought out a husband. She could have. She did not do that. In fact, in verse 11, Ruth's character is described as noble. He says, hey, all the people here now know you are an honorable woman. Her reputation is solid. It's good. The Jews in Bethlehem who have got to know this young widow, they say, this is a fine young woman. She's an honorable person. And so her actions when she goes to visit Boaz reflect an implicit trust in the wisdom of Naomi and in the character of Boaz. When Naomi says, go do this, you understand, Ruth's putting a lot on the line here. But she trusts Naomi and she trusts Boaz. Now, what does Ruth request of Boaz? Again, verse 9, spread your wings, the corner of your garment over your servant, for you are a Goel. You are a redeemer. Now, put this in the context of chapter 2, verse 12, where Boaz refers to the wings of Yahweh. Ruth is asking him to be her husband. That's what she's asking. Would you fulfill the role of Goel? Would you marry me? Will you put your wings over me and protect me, just as Yahweh put his wings over Israel and protected them? Will you do that? That's what she's asking. And so here we find three honorable people all trying to do the right thing. In Psalm 5 and verse 12, it says, for surely, O Lord, you bless the righteous. You surround them with your favor as a shield. And that's absolutely right. You seek to do what's right. God's not going to let you down. These people are seeking to do what's right. And God blesses them. One of the greatest legacies that you can leave your family is having lived an honorable life of which they can be proud. I was honored to preach the funeral of my dad and of my mom. Honored. And one of the reasons I was honored is because I got to speak about two honorable people. People who had lived godly lives, set godly examples. They left behind an incredibly positive spiritual legacy. No, they didn't leave a lot of money behind. Didn't make any difference. What they left behind was far more valuable than any physical goods they could have left behind. They left behind a positive spiritual legacy. These people are honorable people living in an honorable way. Let me conclude this by talking just for a moment about what I believe is the foundation of true love. Marriages are not built on, is she cute or does he have a good job? Now, in this day and age, unfortunately, that happens way too often. Is she cute? Is she going to be arm candy for me? Are the guys going to look at me and envy me because she's so pretty? Or is he making enough money that I'm going to be comfortable and I'm going to be taken care of? And does he have a really good job? Does he have great prospects? Way too many people are trying to build a relationship on a lousy foundation. Folks, that's a lousy foundation. Marriages are built, good solid marriages are built on character. They're not built on is he cute? Is she cute? Does he have a good job? That's not what they're built on. Marry somebody that you can respect. And I guarantee you love will flourish. A good marriage is a mutual admiration society, not an ongoing therapy session. And too many marriages today, unfortunately, become ongoing therapy sessions rather than solid relationships. Listen, the importance of trust is incredible. I tell the ladies out of the prison on a regular basis, form a relationship with somebody you can trust. Because trust is every bit as important to that marriage relationship as love, maybe more. Because you can love somebody, but if you can't trust them, it's tough to live with them. Character is what matters. Ruth chooses to marry Boaz. Why? Because he's a good man. That's why. And she knows that he's a good man. Could Ruth have said to Naomi, sorry, this guy's older than me. I don't think so. I'm going to find somebody else. No. She admires the character of the man, the honorable nature of the man. She has fallen in love with a good man. Boaz chooses to marry Ruth. Again, why? Listen to him. You're a noble woman. You're a woman of character. I've seen that in you, and I admire that. And he is honored and eager to have the opportunity to marry this young woman. Now, he could have said, hey, I'm older, I don't think so. I don't want to be bothered with all of this. But that's not his reaction at all. The foundation of true love, brothers and sisters, comes from the inside, not the outside. And so, in conclusion, the book of Ruth shares some very important truths. 3,000 years ago, character mattered a lot. And it still does. It matters just as much today as it did then. It is vitally important. 3,000 years ago, relationships which lasted were built on the foundation of good character. And they still are. Good character leads to good choices, and good choices lead to good results. Let's learn from this light in a time of darkness. Let's learn what it means to be a person who loves God, who seeks to honor His will, and who seeks to live a life that reflects His will, His guidance. Let us be people of character. In a day and age when there are more and more people who are characters, not necessarily people of character, but they're characters. The world desperately needs people of character. Isn't it interesting? I'm just fascinated by the fact that mobsters who will kill somebody in a second and who have no honor demand that they be treated with honor. They can lie to anybody else, but don't you lie to them. They can steal from anybody else, but don't you steal from them. In a sense, they demand people of character be around them, even as they despise that character. As a people of God, we have the opportunity. You are a city set on a hill. You're a light. Don't put it under a bushel. Put it on the stand. Let it shine to all that are in the house. They'll see your good works, and they will glorify your Father who is in heaven. Let's learn from Ruth. Let's be people of character. This morning, we can help you in your walk with the Lord. Whether that's to begin that walk as you confess the Son of God and put Him on in baptism, or whether you need our prayers to continue that walk in faith, if there's any way that we can help you, please come while we stand and while we sing.
Jesus, let us come to